Before this video starts, if you enjoyed this video, there are many more like it already on the channel with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I'm trying to hit 125,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it. I upload 6 to 7 days a week on this channel, so if you're looking for some consistent basketball talk, this is the place for it. Also, drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. Also, real quick, there is a new episode of the Rusty and Mojo show out now with a special guest in Legend of Winning. This was done in person in Atlanta with all of us there, and it was 2 hours long and an incredibly funny and fun time, so go check that one out. So I don't typically make regular videos on the same team back to back, except the Bulls because I'm a homer, but the Milwaukee Bucks are currently sitting in a 3-0 hole, and as of the recording of this video, they are losing to the Miami Heat with Giannis being out for the rest of this game, so odds are they're going to lose, and even if they don't, based on the precedent, a team being 3-0 means they're going to lose the series. And as a result, with Giannis's impending free agency in 2021, the Bucks franchise is currently in a tough spot because their standing with Giannis is on thin ice. Regardless of who you think deserves the majority of the blame for this series, it's Mike Budenholzer, by the way, at the end of the day, the Bucks are at risk to lose Giannis, and they need to do everything in their power to make sure that they don't lose him. So today, I wanted to give my pitch on how the Bucks should fix this situation in order to retain Giannis. Let's get into it.
Absolutely incredibly with the acrobatic alley-oop.
So first things first, as I said in the intro, the #1 reason why I believe this series went as poorly as it did is Mike Budenholzer. So step 1 of 3 is fire Mike Budenholzer. To put it simply, Bud does a lot of really positive things, but when it comes to the playoffs, he does more negative than he does positive, so your playoff success is not going to be as good as you'd like with him as your head coach, and playoff success is how you're going to keep Giannis around. It is flat out unacceptable to play your best player on average 35 minutes per game in a tight playoff series. Unacceptable. It's unacceptable to not make any adjustments when you find yourself at a couple of tough hurdles. That's not acceptable. I've said it like 5 times now, but holy shit. Mike makes for an unbelievably good assistant in terms of his X's and O's knowledge. However, the man just simply does not make adjustments, which is unacceptable. So who do you hire? Well, I would suggest one of Dave Yeager or Kenny Atkinson. I feel like both of these guys have been pegged as young player development coaches, but I also think they're just good coaches with a good recognition of their players' strengths and weaknesses, and they cater their teams to said strengths and weaknesses, especially Yeager. This is the problem with Bud because he keeps trying to use Giannis as the main ball handler in the half court when he is more suited as a traditional big man in the half court, especially against some playoff defenses like the Toronto Raptors last year or the Miami Heat this year. Both Kenny and Yeager would be able to recognize this and make that adjustment because they're competent NBA coaches. So that's step 1. Step 2 is trading for Chris Paul. Now, I am far from the first person to suggest this, but I really think this would be the defining move for the Bucks keeping Giannis. See, I'm not nearly as critical of Giannis as many others with this series because I don't think Giannis is getting exposed, because being exposed implies it's showing a weakness that we didn't already know about. We already knew that Giannis cannot create his shot on the perimeter, we already knew that he cannot shoot, and we already knew that he can sometimes struggle against defenses like that of the Miami Heat. It was proven with the Raptors and Al Horford last year. All that's really being exposed here is that when Giannis can't get a casual 30, the Bucks are fucked because this supporting cast isn't nearly as good as many of y'all think it is. Bledsoe isn't reliable, and Chris Middleton is often miscast in a role he doesn't fit. Chris is a great third option, forced to be a second option. And on top of that, he can be unreliable, but that unreliability isn't as consequential if you have statistically the clutchest player in the league on your team. Paul is a significantly better shot creator than Chris Middleton. What the Toronto Raptors exposed last year and what the Miami Heat are currently exposing this year is that the Milwaukee Bucks really need a shot creator and they don't have one. Not a reliable one anyways. Getting Chris Paul fixes that, and that's not to mention the fact that he is a phenomenal leader and an even more phenomenal playmaker. The best playmaker on the Bucks is either Giannis or Bledsoe, and that's not great. Paul is one of the greatest playmakers of all time. And though I believe Giannis is a decent leader, he isn't the most vocal one, and when the Bucks are losing momentum and they need someone to get on their asses, Giannis doesn't do that. Paul will do that. Imagine trying to defend an offense centered around Chris Paul and Giannis pick and rolls with Chris Middleton moving off the ball to get threes and Brook Lopez and whoever is the wing is spotting up. That's tough to guard. But I can't imagine I'm shocking anybody by saying Paul would be good in Milwaukee. What the question is why would the Thunder trade Paul? And if they would, what would that deal be? Well, to answer that question, I initially was not sure of what Chris Paul's future in OKC would be until I saw him post this video on Twitter after losing to the Rockets in Game 7.
And coming there, obviously a lot of people try to count us out, counted me out, and all I can say is I'll never forget it. Sam, you were straightforward with me from day one. I don't know what the future holds. To Oklahoma City, thank you guys. To Kobe, you behind the camera, Matt, everybody that made this experience what it was. I hate that it ended as early as it did, but Oklahoma City will always have a special place in my heart.
Based on these clips, I really feel like Pressey told Paul that he was going to play out this year and then he'd trade him when his contract was a little bit shorter and he had proven his worth. And more importantly than my projections just based off of a Twitter video, Paul's value is higher right now than it's ever going to be from here on out. So if Paul is ever getting traded, it's going to be now. And I have always felt that he would be traded eventually. So assuming Paul is on the market, to what lengths do the Bucks go to land him? Well, the thing is, no matter how you spin it, this trade is going to be a huge risk for the Bucks. But it's a risk that you take to keep Giannis fucking Antetokounmpo. Giannis is so damn good that if you have to swing for the fences and take a huge risk in praying that Giannis sticks around, it's worth it if it gets Giannis to stick around, and it's worth trying even if he doesn't. This hypothetical trade, if on the table, is very similar to a trade that didn't happen back in 2009. LeBron James is set to be a free agent. The Cavaliers have two options: stick with their guns and hope he resigns, or trade for another star. There is a move on the table: Amari Stoudemire, who at this point was a top 15 or so player in the league, in exchange for Zydrunas Ilgauskas' expiring contract, as well as JJ Hickson, with JJ being the foundation of the move because he showed signs of being a pretty damn good player as a rookie. So Phoenix wanted him to replace Amari, but the Cavs wavered. Because LeBron could leave the Cavaliers in free agency, they didn't want to trade a young asset in JJ Hickson. That is what we call a mistake. If the Cavs make this move, LeBron and Stoudemire create one of the best pick and roll duos of all time and at least compete for a championship, if not win it. When that happens, I doubt LeBron leaves and then you just retain the best player in the league. This is a very similar situation to what the Bucks currently see themselves in, and they need to learn from that mistake from the past that the Cavs made. You can sit around with your dick in your hand while Luka makes the Dallas Mavericks look more and more like a desirable landing spot, or you can swing for the fences and save the franchise. Something the Cavs declined to do. Your move, Milwaukee. Sorry if I'm depressing you Cavs fans, but like, at least you have Colin Sexton and Andre Drummond. Anyways, the reason this trade would be a big risk is because the Bucks are going to have to trade a first-round pick post-2021, and that pick could be really big if Giannis leaves, which is a bigger risk than losing JJ Hickson. So the move I have is Eric Bledsoe, Ersan Ilyasova, George Hill, as well as Indiana's first this year in this year's draft, Milwaukee's 2021 first rounder, which isn't a huge deal because the Bucks would be good this year, and the Bucks 2022 first, top 3 protected, and maybe you swap that 2021 first with a 2023 top like 7 protected first rounder. And the Bucks can use that first on some other player to fill out the roster. That is 3 firsts, and I'd even go 4. Now, on the surface, this is not a good move because it's really not ideal to trade 4 first-round picks, even just 3, for a 35-year-old player. However, I think this move gives Milwaukee a championship next year and in turn keeps Giannis around. So a championship plus 5 more years of Giannis is a pretty good fucking return for 4 first-round picks. And keep in mind that that's 2 late first-round picks and 1 to 2 picks that could potentially be really great, that still have some protections. I think OKC takes that, and I think the Milwaukee Bucks come out on top of this deal. Also, can I just say that I lose my fucking mind about the discourse around this trade? When I have suggested this, people have said, why would the Thunder take back 2 point guards? They already have Shai Gilgeous and Dennis Schroeder. Look, dude, they don't care about the players they're getting back. Bledsoe and George Hill are salary filler. This hypothetical trade is all about the first-round picks. I would be shocked if Bledsoe and Hill played more than 30 games for them before they were traded themselves. That's not a big deal. So, step 1 is fire Mike Budenholzer, step 2 is trade for Chris Paul, and step 3 is use what little cap space you do have in order to fill out the roster. There are some small ways to free up cap. After this move, the team should be essentially at the cap, but they could trade DJ Wilson for a second-rounder. Robin Lopez, who they gave a stupid contract to, packaged with seconds of their own, which would free like $8 million in total, and they have a pretty sizable mid-level exception at around $9 million. They have some money, and this particular free agent class is really good for teams that have some money because there are a lot of underrated role players here that by association will be cheap. So for the mid-level, it might be a bit of a stretch, but I think it's possible. I would sign Goran Dragic. Initially, I thought he'd go back to Miami, but my friend Ask the Truth pointed out to me that Miami wants cap space for 2021, ironically to sign Giannis, so I doubt they want to give him more than a 1-year contract. The Bucks could give him a 3-year, $27+ million deal, and I think at his age, he takes that. And that's yet another pretty reliable, granted aging, shot creator, and I also don't think he would have any problem playing next to Chris Paul because they're both good shooters and good playmakers and all that. With that remaining 8 or so mil, I'd re-sign Kyle Korver. The guy is going to be a lethal shooter till he's 50, and his poor defense is fine in tight minutes. Wesley Matthews is going to take his player option, and then outside of that, there are a couple of names here. Brandon Knight, who was a lethal shooter for the Pistons and can play the 2-guard spot. Etuan Moore is a good shooter. Juan Hernan Gomez is a shooter who can play the 4. Damian Dotson is a shooter. A bunch of the guys I mentioned are shooting guards, so pick like 2 of them. And I think the Milwaukee Bucks should really take the Jeff Green risk because he's been amazing at center for the Houston Rockets this year. In the regular season, he shot 35% from 3 on 4 attempts, as well as 80% from 2, which is wild. He played good defense in the regular season for the Rockets, and in the playoffs, he is shooting 46% on 3 attempts from 3, playing 30 minutes for them. Because he's a little bit older and has a record of being inconsistent, I think you could get him for like $3 to $4 million, and he could play like 20 minutes for you even going into the playoffs. So in conclusion, fire Bud, trade for Chris Paul, and fill out the rest of the roster with some smart strategic signings. Going into next season, the Bucks would have a starting lineup of CP3, let's say Dante DiVincenzo, Chris Middleton, Giannis, and Brook Lopez, with Goran Dragic, Jeff Green, Wesley Matthews, and we'll say Juan Hernan Gomez off of the bench. That is a championship caliber team right there, and that could be enough to retain a now 2-time MVP, which it's going to be awkward when that's announced, but it is what it is. So that's what I think they should do. That is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this. Check out that Legend of Winning pod, and cue the outro music.